recording? Yeah, okay. Okay, we're recording now. So welcome everyone. This is the SIG Cluster Lifecycle Cloud Provider Azure meeting. Welcome to everyone who's here for the first time. This meeting is under the CNCF Code of Conduct, so please be kind to everyone and respect each other. So I think we can start with introductions. I see a few new faces. Would anyone like to jump in and introduce themselves and tell us a bit about what brought you here?
I could start. Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi there.
Yeah,
I'm Nicola. I'm working at Giants Forum. So we've been in touch with you lately, Marta from my team. So I'm working Team Celestial, which is working on the Giants Forum for Azure. So I joined Giants Forum company recently, like 1.5 months ago. So I thought it would be a good idea for me to join these meetings, and in the beginning I'll be probably more in listening mode. So just to hear what's going on here and like to meet you folks.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else?
Sorry, I joined late. This is Craig Peters. I think you know me.
Hi, Craig.
Not everybody does. I'm a PM working with the Microsoft team.
Welcome. All right, last chance. Okay, moving on. So I guess this is the point where we usually look at the project board and test grid. Steven, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we can do that, or we can do discussions. I don't think there's been anything exciting on test grid lately, because there have been very few merges. So
yeah, I don't think so. I think we can come back to the project board maybe. Let's just have the discussions first. So there's a few items on the agenda, but if you have anything that you'd like to talk about and it's not on the agenda yet, please go to the meeting notes and add it. Or if you're unable to edit, feel free to send me a note or put it in the chat. Okay, so first thing.
Just a note for anyone who has access to the agenda, who can see the agenda but cannot access it. If you join the SIG Cluster Lifecycle Google group, you'll get edit access to it. Please, for the people who are on the call, take a moment and drop your names as attendees on the agenda. I've dropped the agenda in the chat.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Steven. Okay, so first item, I actually added that one, is moving this meeting to an earlier time to accommodate Europe contributors. So I know there's a few folks from Giants Forum. Nicola is here today, but there are a few others that were interested in joining this meeting and contributing to the Azure provider. So I guess, does anyone have any objections to trying to find a new meeting time a bit earlier in the day that would work better for Europe?
Yes, but no, not really. The yes is for the fact that we recently did a poll to see when a good meeting time would be. So if we're going to do it again, one, I think we need to wait until 2020. Or if we do it now, we should give a good wide berth between now and the holiday season, after the holiday season, to give people an opportunity to contribute. I don't want us to continue shuffling the meetings until we are really sure what time it's going to be. I'm totally fine with moving it up to an earlier time. I just want to make sure that we find something that's amenable for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. And I think we can probably do the full early January, since this is bi-weekly anyways, and the next one would be right in the middle of the holiday season. So we'll probably skip that one. And then we can do our first January meeting at the new time. But we should definitely do a poll.
Yeah, let's give at least let's give at least 2 meetings, or at least the span of 2 meetings before choosing the new meeting time. So starting in
Sure.
February.
I think that's reasonable, and we can put an option on the poll to keep the meeting as is, and if that's the most popular time, then we keep that.
Sounds good.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions about that?
I forgot who exactly requested it, but if they're on the call.
Yeah, it was me, like folks from Transform. So other team member, Jose, he's from Spain, and so we are basically both in Central European time zone. So
Okay.
at this moment it's like 10:30, like it's 10:30 in the evening here, so it's quite a bit late.
Yeah, so I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, if please open an issue so that we keep track of it.
Open an issue where exactly? In GitHub, in which repository?
Cluster API Azure.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Will do.
Yep.
Sounds good. All right. By the way, is anyone taking notes? Or if not, and I assume not, would anyone like to help take notes?
I can help take notes.
Thank you. All right. Cool. Okay, next item. Release V1 Alpha 2. So I think we're pretty much ready. There's been, I don't think we've had many merges recently to do with Alpha 2, and there's even a PR open to start adding the V1 Alpha 3 types. So we should at least start getting a branch for the V1 Alpha 2 release, I think.
Yeah, so I basically tossed the repo at a few new people internally and said, go through the docs and see if you can do this. And the general consensus was they can't right now. I think the docs have diverged so much from what V1 Alpha 1 was. Now there's confusion between getting started and the development stuff. David, I know you did a docs update recently. But there's still some stuff that that could be tweaked. So I've got a bunch of feedback, and I'm going to. There's a development guide that's within the Cluster API book, and that development guide is also out of date. So I'm going to tackle updating that development guide and pointing out to our repo for any Azure specific things. I think we should wait until that gets done before cutting the branch. And I know I've said that before. So as soon as the 1.17 release is out the door, that's essentially the branch manager for that. So that's essentially been taking up my time and KubeCon. So that's Monday. Once that's out the door, the docs will be my top priority, and we'll get this going.
Which development guide are you referring to in the Cluster API book?
Cluster
Is it
API.
the, like, getting started?
It's Cluster API book /docs/architecture/development guide.md.
Okay, it's not the book that's published, right? Because I updated that.
In the book, but it's not published. Yeah, no, you updated the consumer of Cluster API Azure doc, basically, but not the, so there's a development doc that's not updated.
Okay, got it. And I was actually going to bring this up later in a later agenda item, but if anyone is looking for a way to help and contribute and doesn't really know where to get started, I think we would definitely appreciate any contributions to documentation. Maybe not that one in particular, but just in general, I think the repo lacks documentation. And I think that's actually a really good way to learn about how things work. And when you're a first-time user, you actually have that really special first-time lens where you see things the way anyone who comes to a repo for the first time sees things. And so you can maybe write docs in a way that's easier to understand for a first-timer, whereas someone who's been contributing for a while kind of takes things for granted sometimes. So please help if you are looking for ways to help.
Yeah, and huge plus one to that. Like the people that I gave, I pointed to, they basically found a bunch of stuff that I had made assumptions about. So definitely fresh eyes will help.
Yeah. And in addition, if you see areas that you'd like a doc for, but you don't have time to write it, a good first issue is also a good way to. So maybe sometimes someone else can take that on.
Stephen, do those folks have that feedback? Can you forward it along?
Yes, but the feedback is going to end up going into the development guide anyway. But yes, I can forward it along.
It makes sense.
Cool. Any questions? No? All right. End-to-end test updates. I also added that one. So I just wanted to give Javier a chance, if he's here, to give us like a brief update, because he's been working really hard on the end-to-end tests.
I'm around.
And adopting the. Hello.
It's coming around, slow, but coming around. Her credentials are hard, apparently. I can run this on my desktop. The moment by the way, we spent some time adding a new resubmit for the repo. Had to add a few more jobs to the test infra repository. Once that was in place, if I run this end-to-end test, it's timing out. So, and I don't have right now a way to figure out why it's timing out. My guess is that credentials are not picked up correctly, and the cluster, my first step is just retrying infinitely until things just bail out. So I'm going to see what the AWS guys did to see the output or the controller logs. That might tell me that something is, or confirm that something is wrong.
So quick thing on that. So based on the piece of code, the snippet that you sent me, if you just add some log output to that piece to let us know whether we're using environment-based or whether it could or could not find the environment-based stuff or a file-based credentials, I think that would get you further.
Okay.
Right.
Just check the
So,
file
yeah,
is there.
Exactly. So at least you'd know from CI output that.
Okay,
You
know, that will look quicker.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, eventually I want to add. I think that's a nice thing to have. Controllers output just to troubleshooting things. But that will get us out of the woods. No, you don't think that?
Yeah. Okay. No. That would be great. I think that the the quick fix is just to actually have the end-to-end test tell you whether or not what it's.
I agree. I think that getting this out faster is priority, and then how to get more information when things fail can be an improvement we can do later.
Yeah, we need to also, for that PR, we need to also find a good stopping point, because I think last I checked it was 25 something commits, which I'm
squashing this.
Okay.
No, but each commit is like super small.
Okay.
When I find a chunk of time, I just do some work and push it.
Okay. All right.
I'm squashing now.
Yeah. Okay. Because I am going to knit on that during the review.
No. I agree. So you can. I'm going to create a new PR with the thing. This feature you can guys try to run locally, and what I try to figure out why it fails in the server.
Yeah, I would say if you're squashing now, then totally cool. But just make sure that if you're not squashing immediately, you make sure you purge the old creds from.
It's all gone.
Okay. All right. Cool. Perfect.
Awesome.
I think that's the status. Oh, I think I noticed maybe it's something I'm doing wrong. If I launch, if I try to create two machines at the same time instead of just creating one and then I'm waiting for the next one, things don't make progress. So I need to figure out if that's something I'm doing wrong or is a problem with the controller.
What's happening? Instance creation?
Yeah, it's if I launch two, it doesn't make sense because the examples works. But if I launch two machines at the same time, nothing happens. I mean, I wait for the first one to come up, the first control plane. If I launch more than one in the next step, in my case, in my test, things don't make progress, don't work. But it maybe it's a problem. It's a bug on my code.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Yeah. Next time you see that, just capture some logs for us. So. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Javier.
No problem.
So I changed the order of the next two items just to give someone else the chance to talk. But Richard, I think you're here. I saw you earlier. Yes. Okay. Great. So Richard has been working on a PR to improve the UI or UX for the VM image specification. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I guess it's really just to see if we can get to a consensus about the two different approaches. So one was to have new resource kinds and have an object reference within the VM spec. But then obviously that results in DTRDs and a bunch of other instances of those we have to create. And then on the other option is that we use the raw extension that you can then embed directly within the virtual machine spec. So those are the two options that have sort of been discussed within, I guess, the issue and then the work in progress PR. So just let's see if we can agree which way to proceed.
Great. So Wenli had some thoughts about that. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think really what I'm suggesting is just a little bit of a tweak of the first the CRD approach. So instead of creating the whole CRD, you just all you need to do is create a struct that has the type meta field embedded, and then as long as you register that type, you should be able to embed it directly into, as raw extension directly into the YAML. And so that way, the YAML will just say, instead of just having the object reference kind and API version fields, it'll also have the fields for the image reference itself. And then we don't need to have the actual reference or link between those two. So if everybody agrees that we want to strive towards that UX, then Richard, if you have issues getting that working, just let me know and I'll be happy to help.
Okay. Oh yeah. Sounds good.
Go for it.
Thanks. What are the downsides, positives or negatives to the approaches?
So really, I think the downside to me is having the separate CRD, it be an actual object reference.
Okay.
I think the primary goal behind the issue is to because we might have different image structs in the future. Yep. We want to be able to make that dynamic. One way is to have a separate CRD and to have that that reference there. But the other way is just have it be a runtime raw extension, and then be able to detect that type at runtime, and then act appropriately. So I think just in terms of UX, having the single CRD is just slightly nicer. You can look at the machine specification in one view.
Cool.
Yeah, I tend to agree there too.
Cool.
All right. Are we good? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank
you. All right. So next one's mine. So I wanted to talk briefly about image versioning, and specifically how to name our image SKUs. So we published a kind of a prototype image to be able to test for 1.16. And at first we thought that we could name SKUs using the Kubernetes minor version. So in this case, it's 1.16. And then the patch versions would be reusing the same SKU. The problem is that you need to be able to specify the image that goes with your specific Kubernetes version. So you need to know what image has what patch version. And the way Azure images work, you can specify the SKU name, and it has to be a limit of 50 characters. But then for the version, you're kind of limited where it has to be a x.x.x. And so for now, we're using base. But there's no other way that I found to specify the patch version, like Kubernetes patch version. So one possibility is we change the SKU naming to include the patch version of Kubernetes. And so we have one SKU per Kubernetes version, which itself isn't a big problem because we're not limited in the number of SKUs, but it does tend to expand the matrix of SKUs.
Yeah, we should not do that. We should drop the Kubernetes version altogether. The SKU should be, the version should be the cluster API Azure version at any one point. If anything, we should key on the cluster API version. The Kubernetes patch release at any one time, that should be solved in the matrix that we have on the within the repo, right? So versions.
So what do you mean in the matrix in the repo? How do you specify as a user, or even in the repo, how do we get you the right image? So when you say I want a cluster API cluster with kubelet version 1.15.3 or 1.15.4, then we need to have a way to default to the right image.
So we would
because each image has one version.
Right, we would want the version of cluster API. They should go to the repo and figure out what version of cluster API they need, because there's a support matrix for versions of cluster API. Right, our versions of cluster API. Right, we're not. We should. So yeah, so every version of cluster API Azure is going to support some set of Kubernetes versions, right?
So we just pack everything into that image?
So right now the image builder only puts one Kubernetes version per image.
Right.
So if it's a set of versions, how do we know which one to pick?
I would say that we publish the most recent one at the time of publishing.
Wait, so like.
Okay, maybe we can. Yeah, go ahead, Ace.
So Stephen, I mean, like, what happens if somebody deploys a 115 cluster, for example, and wants to upgrade to 116? I think that's like, how do you differentiate the image? You just say it's the same image. Excuse me. Like, that's the question here, right? Is like, oh, I changed my Kubernetes version. Should I get a different VM image? Probably, but how do you differentiate?
Right. Good question. I don't know. Is the current answer. But what I want to make sure that we're doing is not essentially exploding this matrix for every patch version of Kubernetes that we have.
It sounds like for each supported version of Kubernetes, you just need one image, basically. It's not really a mapping like of a matrix at this point. It's really just the Kubernetes version that's supported.
And is that the AWS image? Is it every patch version, or is it every minor version, and that minor version has every patch?
I think they're doing I think they're doing the version at whatever time that they're publishing. Hold on, let me try to look it up.
They fetch it by patch version. That I know. I don't know how they publish it.
I see.
But there is a filter on the Kubernetes version when they fetch the image.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They get the latest patch of the minor version, right? Something like that.
I think it would be helpful to understand, have documented somewhere. I know that there is short version. I got very confused going through all of the image documentation. It would be helpful to understand exactly what we can and can't do for certain fields, and then maybe put this up as an issue.
Yeah, I looked into this quite a bit, so I can summarize my findings in an issue. but the conclusion I came to is it's really hard to distinguish, like to fetch an Azure image per Kubernetes version, because the only field you have to filter is the SKU, basically. And the SKU is just a string of 50 characters. So we can do whatever we want with that, but that's the only thing we can really change.
Got it.
But yeah, I'll summarize in an issue and then we can discuss there.
Cool, cool.
Anyone else want to say something about this, or should we move on? Right. Okay. There's one last agenda item. If anyone else has anything they want to add, let us know. But in the meantime, I noticed that there are a lot of people that are asking how they can contribute, and we don't have that many issues that are good for first-time contributors that are open right now. So one thing that you can do to help if you're looking to contribute is try to help us open like good first issues. If you go through like a quick start or first time deployment and you notice things that are missing or not working as you expect them, please open an issue and let us know. I think we're all like recently getting started on development on this repo, so like don't hesitate to share like your findings.
I was planning to do something like that with the end-to-end test because I'm going to try to get something that is functional but not complete, and so that will be a good area where people can contribute. I'll make sure to identify what's missing and create tasks for that.
Yeah, that'd be really great. Thanks, Javier.
No problem.
One other thing is at the KubeCon, somebody mentioned that might be worthwhile to put together a code walkthrough and videotape that. I think that would be helpful too.
So
for a future date.
Yeah, we've done a few of those at this point. I'm not sure if we need to do another one, but I think that probably once we drop the docs, we can do that. Drop the next release, we can do that. Because essentially we'd be doing a code walkthrough of the oldest or the most recent release, right? Which is old at this point. So so let's maybe you want to open an issue for that to have another.
Oh yeah, I'll open an issue for that.
Cool.
Yeah, no, thanks for suggesting.
I would also say that in addition to opening issues about things that you notice are wrong with maybe docs or flow, please start thinking about like what your use cases are, right? Because we're all on this call because we have different use cases, or maybe we work for a vendor company, or maybe we're building a product around this, or maybe we're a consumer, right? So just know that everyone working on the project may not explicitly know about your use case. So feel free to open an issue and talk about like what you're trying to get out of it too. I think that would be helpful for us to try to coalesce a roadmap around what Cluster API Azure will be.
Definitely. Awesome. Is there anything that anyone wants to add? Any questions? Anything you want to discuss? And I didn't see any things about topics, so if you sent one, assume that I missed it.
Overall, I want to say thank you to everyone. I have been under branch manager stuff and wrapping up the release for 117. So I appreciate everyone who's been stepping up the seal, definitely. Flexing your approver muscle, and everyone who's been working on the repo in general over the last cycle or so. So thank you.
No problem.
Thanks for shepherding the release, Stephen.
Yeah.
They're coming too fast, but thank you.
We're working on that too. Maybe, I don't know.
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
All right.
Yeah, there's actually
yeah.
some LTS discussion, and I don't know where that's going to go, to be honest. But people are talking about it, and people are also talking about shorter releases for stability. I can link some of that stuff around if people are interested in it.
Yeah, I know. Occasionally from our customers, we get asks about LTS type support. So I think having the concept of LTS in Kubernetes itself, I think, would be very helpful.
Yeah, so I think one of the main goals out of the current LTS proposal is to try to shift the support cycle for any one release from somewhere between from 9 to somewhere between 12 or 15 months. I don't know if that will happen, because I think the biggest thing we need to expound upon is the burden, the additional burden that it's going to cause around CI, around personnel, so on and so forth. So tricky. It's tricky.
Yeah.
Awesome. I don't think there are any items on the board or in issues that are worth triaging right now. It was a pretty slow 2 weeks because of KubeCon and Thanksgiving. So I think we can skip that unless anyone has any objections or anything on the board that they really want to talk about. No? All right. I don't know how you do this. It's so hard to talk in the void. Okay. I think we're done. We have some extra time, so if anyone has any random questions or specific questions about the project or anything, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I think we can give back time to everyone.
Oh, I have a topic.
Go for it.
I had some discussions with some folks at KubeCon about a cluster API provider for AKS. And the idea there would be you could basically use the cluster API interface to control your AKS cluster. So from provisioning to scaling, and even to the point where we want to kind of invoke upgrades and things like that. And I don't know if anybody else has thought about this. I think there's actually quite a lot to do in terms of, if cluster API upstream doesn't exactly represent the exact abstractions that are kind of needed for the various forms of sort of managed clusters. And so those are I think those are the things to think about. So I was just, kind of wanted to see if anybody has any opinions on this, or they thought about this already.
So my one note there is I would hope to see those abstractions be built into the provider-specific implementation, as opposed to trying to fork off and do something new. Because I think that's a pattern that has been shown to not be great. There are a few providers who have done cluster API-like things that are not quite cluster API, and I would hate to see managed implementation go that direction.
Right. I think that's along the same lines that I'm thinking is really, when I talk about support for manage, it's that we should have the right abstractions in upstream cluster API in order to implement the providers to manipulate a managed cluster. I think one of the properties that at least the GKE and AKS clusters have is the the control plane management is delegated to the cloud provider, and instead of Cluster API sort of managing it directly. And so I've been trying to think about what that really looks like in terms of a Cluster API abstraction. But yeah, I think that's interesting, and try to find the intersection between these two.
Yeah, I think we get a I think we get a nugget of that out of like some of the work that you're doing right now around machine pool, right? Like if we can start to take we can start to take some of these types and understand what they would look like interacting with the cloud provider, right? So like delegating specific operations to the cloud provider, right? The scaling or not scaling, and reporting that status back to the cluster in some way, right? I think figuring out how to do that and take all of the pieces, and eventually, right now it's a single unit within. It would be like the VMSS, right, unit within the cluster, but eventually maybe it could be the cluster as well, right? So I think that the path that we're going down right now with machine pool is going to show itself to be something that's generally useful for not just scaling types, but also other types.
Certainly.
All right. Anything else? Cool. Have a great day, everyone. And if you have any questions that come up after the meeting, you can always reach us on Slack, Cluster API Azure.
And happy holidays if we don't see you before then, right?
Yeah. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
When is the next meeting?
It's probably going to be during the holidays. So, yeah, or rather, it would be scheduled during the holidays, so we're not going to have it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think next one is meant to be on.
I'll be here. But...
Yeah, actually, the next two are going to be during the holiday season, because the next one is on the 2nd of January.
Yeah. So the 19th is holiday-esque. We could. I don't think we need to have it. I think we should probably cancel it. And the 2nd would be out too. So next time would be the 16th of January. But we'll be on the channels and all that good stuff. So.
I'll send out a quick poll on the channel to see if people are around on the 19th and interested in hopping on a quick call or not. And if there's like 2 people, we can cancel.
All right. Sounds good.
That sounds better.
Cool. I hope I wasn't a terrible host.
We're awesome.
You're awesome. You're fine.
We like this host better.
I'll stop the recording.
Work has been passed.
Get that old host out of here.
Yes, it's working. Little by little.
Thanks, everyone.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.